I'm not going to repeat all these things, but it's been an amazing career, way more than you can imagine. I have two recollections. One is I was in charge of bringing the ball up the court. Harry stole it from me and shot it every time. But more importantly, I will say, because I've seen him coach and yelling at his players and everything, I can say as much better as Harry was than almost all of us. Maybe Dick Small was that good, but he never criticized anybody else. You threw a bad pass, you didn't do this, that. It was never one of these people that said, why'd you do that? So he changed as a coach. But I'll leave it to Harry. And when there's questions, just wave and I'll tell Harry who it is.
Great. Great. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to your class. I did tell Kenny at lunch that in honor of the class, I grew my hair and haven't combed it for 6 months. Okay? So I feel like I'm right back in 1973 now. It's my great honor to be here, share a little bit about what we call a purple pathway, kind of a journey through athletics in Division I, II, and III. And so a couple of people said, well, why Division II? And I don't think a lot of people realize, but we were Division II. Kenny and Dipper played in Division II. We went Division III after the 1974 season. So in my senior year, we had actually all moved officially into into Division III. And so Division III has thrived since then, and Williams has been a great member of it. The actual impetus was Bob Peck, our athletic director, going to a meeting in football and listening to people in Division II talk about limiting the scholarship number to 80. I don't know if we had 80 financial aid kids in my class. Okay. But we actually moved into Division III very, very comfortably, and then the journey started from there. My journey starts as a player. The foundation of all this is what Princeton would call education through athletics, but we'll get a little bit more into that. We'll talk about the changing landscape and what's changed, and then happy to take some questions. So, and Kenny was right. I yelled a lot more at my players than I did my teammates, which is actually quite an easy thing to do. I had two spectacular 20 and 21st century philosophers that influenced me the most. And they are my father, Harry Sheehy Jr. See, I was the third. Everybody called me Junior, but I was the third. And Phil Jackson. Now, my father was famous for saying things like, Harry, there are more horses' asses in the world than there are horses. Okay. I kind of lived by that one, to be honest. It was pretty easy to live by that one. And 10 more minutes. Now, this was a philosophy that I originally read in John McPhee's wonderful book, A Sense of Where You Are, about Bill Bradley's collegiate career. Wonderful read. It's always worth rereading. If you haven't read it, it's still a great read. But one thing stuck to me as a kind of a middle schooler or high schooler, and that was Bill Bradley saying that whenever I was about to quit, and this is what my father told me one day at a park in New York, whenever you're about to quit, work 10 more minutes. Because if you work 10 more minutes every time you're about to quit, eventually you'll meet someone who quit. And when you meet, you will win. Right? Pretty simple. But I live by that because 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Now you've worked an hour longer than that person. Over the course of a lifetime, that adds up. Now, Connie would tell you that when I was a coach, that changed to work 2 more hours more than anybody. And I would finally get these calls like, all right, look, I actually don't care if you come home. But if you do, there'll be dinner in the refrigerator, okay? Phil Jackson, another great philosopher. Now, here's what I loved about Phil Jackson. He has a quote that said, there's more to life than basketball, but fortunately, there's more to basketball than just basketball. And when I was an athletic director, I shared that with every one of our coaches. There's more to life than field hockey, but lucky for you, there's more to field hockey than just field hockey. So shame on us if we don't use these games as vehicles, and that was part of my growth as both a player, a coach, and an administrator in Division I and II and III that helped me to lay the foundation for what I would start to believe the value of athletics were. Every one of these sports, and we have 32 of them, I think, at Williams, is a leadership and learning laboratory. And if our coaches aren't faculty, if they don't approach it like faculty, then we have wasted an enormous opportunity to impact the lives of the young men and women who play for us. All right, my dad, I love this picture. He always was a little out of sync. But that's one of the best things I inherited from him, right? A willingness to do things that were a little bit different, maybe make a little bit harder decision. We had a guy who worked for me at Dartmouth who said, Harry, what we really want these kids to do is to choose the harder right over the easier wrong, right? Choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Whenever you can do something that's wrong, it's almost always easier. It's almost always the easy way out. And Dad helped to instill that in me. Now, one of the great things about this whole process, and we've been working on this for months, and God bless my wife, Connie, she has spent 75 hours at least on this, and she's not only married to a Luddite, she's married to a blind Luddite, right? And so I went blind in 2021, and so I make out shapes and things, but I can't see anybody's face, can't tell. If you make a face or flip me the bird, I'm not going to know it, okay? So that's all good. And so when we started to open these boxes of things, this picture is almost 75 years old, right? We started to go down these rabbit holes of reading letters and letters from parents and kids that played for me and game programs and all this other stuff. It was really, really fun. This is Dad. That's against Wesleyan on the left. That's against Amherst on the right. And where is that game being played? The single best. I got to play all over the world. I got to play in front of crowds of 15 to 20,000 regularly. This was the most fun I ever had. Most fun I ever had. I wish Dad was still alive because I'd be giving him all kinds of grief for having no left hand. The picture on the right. Okay, so let's start with the journey, player, coach, athletic director, high school, and I took a PG year at Cranwell School down in Lenox, which closed right after I graduated, which I tell people was a coincidence. Pretty sure it was a coincidence. But this is me at Garden City High School. Now, I was about 5'11", and I don't know, I might have weighed $120, $125, maybe dripping wet. That's what I weighed. And I always remember my father, and I'd say, Dad, am I going to be able to be a basketball player? And he said to me one day, he goes, I think you got a better shot at being a jockey. Okay? So I'm like, all right, Dad, thank you. But then I took a PG year because Dad wasn't too happy, not only with my physical development, but with the folks I was hanging around with. And he sent me up to the Good Fathers at Cranwell School. And I grew 4 inches. And when I entered Williams, all of a sudden I was just a shade under 6'4". And then by the time I was a sophomore, I was 6'5". And the reason I put this picture in is, one, because there aren't a lot of pictures of me at Cranwell, number one. But two, this is against Millbrook School, where the great Vern Manley played, right? Yeah. And Vern was an absolute gem. I mean, a gem. I got to know Vern better after we graduated. But this changed the trajectory of my career, because when I left Cranwell, I had 25 to 35 Division I scholarship offers. I'd had lunch with Al McGuire. I had been to Carolina. I had been to all these different places. But remember, this is 1971. There's no ESPN. Nothing. Williams was the same as St. John's to me, right? I probably would have been a little better off at St. John's academically, to be honest. But it was all the same. It didn't, to me, it was no sacrifice to go to Williams. It was a sacrifice for my dad, right? Because he had to write checks. But so then we go to Williams, and this is where the foundation really starts. I did want to say a real thank you to Dipper and Kenny. They were great captains, and they welcomed the sophomores in. And then I had a wonderful captain when I was a junior, Bobby Patterson. And by the time I was a senior, if I couldn't have been a more effective captain than I would have been at this point, then shame on me, because I had great lessons. I learned great lessons by watching how people attempted to lead a basketball team. This is my freshman team. We were 14-1, and Joe LaPaglia is out here somewhere. We're 14-1 because he didn't box out on the last play of a game. If he had boxed out, we'd have been 15-0. And for 25 years, he blamed it on Dittman. If Dittman had only boxed out, and we finally got a few pops in him at a reunion, and he admitted that it was him that didn't box out. Now, a word just about education and philosophy. We couldn't play varsity basketball at that point. I would go back to that tomorrow. It's never going to happen. The genie's out of the bottle. It makes no sense from an admissions perspective anymore to have freshmen not be eligible, but it was one of the best experiences of my life. To get my feet on the ground at a place like this, which is academically rigorous and all the rest, and to be able to play with a group of guys, to not have to play 24, 25 games, although I think we played 24 in 73, we only played 20 in 74, and I think we played 22 in 75. My basketball career was 60 plus games. The kids now play 120 games, right? It's not unusual to play 30 games a year now. And here's your team, all right? Now, I always keep this picture around because I tried to mimic Dipper's mug 1,000 times. You can't look that mean all the time, but this was a wonderful group of guys, and of course, Steve Crean is in the picture as well, as there's several guys from my class. All right, so here we have small overtime victory. Dipper steals the ball at midcourt against WPI, dribbles in, scores with no time left. Williams wins. The other reason it's up here is because Kenny Bate had 24, 16 in the second half in this game. And believe me, I had to memorize all this. And here's Dipper with a rebound, and Kenny is about to take off on the fast break. And I will say this, we had the single worst set of uniforms in the history of college basketball. I kept going, who do we play for? What team am I on, right? And I thought when we first got them, I said, that's pretty good practice gear. Right? It's not bad. This is down at Wesleyan, and that's me in the air with Rich Leary. That poor slob guarded me boxing one 6 out of 8 games. And I know he wasn't sleeping at all during those games. But we have Kenny and Bob Patterson, Mike Rosson's in this, and I think Connie, is Dipper in this one? Yes, Dipper's in this one as well. That was on the old, horrible Wesleyan Fieldhouse. And this is the last game program. Now, I did want to say a word about George Rebb, because I had to hunt for this game program because I always remembered it because it was such an extraordinary piece of art. And this was Kenny and Steve and Dipper's last game, along with Coach Shaw's last home Amherst game. And I read about George. What a remarkable classmate you had. Oh my gosh, his life, if you just go to was it the Washington Post, I think, honey? Go to the WAPO and just read the whole obituary. It's phenomenal. What a remarkably talented guy from the class of 73. This is Al's 300th win. Now, Coach was a little bit like Bear Bryant in the following sense. I'm not changing. You're 19. Why don't you change? But I had grown up going to Al's house for as he would call them, Cokes and banana splits. And when I got the job here as a coach in 1983, Marion Shaw brought the ice cream dishes to my house. And when I left the job and retired from coaching in 2000, I brought the dishes to Dave Paulson's house. And I wish I knew where they were now. I really do. But it was an honor to play in that game. So I put this up because it's the only actually action picture of Joe LaPaglia that is on record. And we were walking over here today. He said, what picture you use? And I said, the one that's hung up on my house. He goes, I don't think you missed that shot. I said, no, I don't think I missed it either, Joe. So there was a chance for 2 there, Joe, but I don't think it happened. Okay, now my dad is also in the corner. That's where Dad hung out. So I'd be shooting a free throw here, and I was a mediocre free throw shooter at best. And I'd clang one, and I'd hear, son of a bitch. I go, and I'd finish the game. He'd go, what are you shooting from the line? I go, Dad, and this was the same thing. Coach Shaw was the same way. My 3rd or 4th game, sophomore year, we're down at Tufts, and I scored 27. Right? I'll never forget this. I scored 27, feeling really good about myself. But we lost. We're sitting in the locker room, and Al comes up to me and he goes, Harry, you got us 27. You scored 27. Your man scored 18. His sub scored 3. His sub scored 2. And his sub scored 4. You got us nothing. See, you can do it without yelling at players. All right, post-college. Now, the opportunity by the time I leave Williams, I had Kurt Tong my last 2 years. He was a wonderful man, good coach, and I had a pretty solid philosophy of how I looked at the game of basketball, that in fact was much more than just basketball. And now I got a chance to go and play after college. While I was a senior, I got a letter from a guy by the name of Joe Tubiolo. He was the president of Sports Celebrities Management. I got a letter that said, "You're on the draft board. We expect you to go between rounds 4 and 8. We'd love to represent you." And so I send all my stuff in. Dad calls him. I have Coach Tong call him. It sounds like they're on the up and up. I signed with Sports Celebrities Management. He then calls me and goes, whatever you do, do not play in any all-star games. So the next week I played in the Hall of Fame game. And I stunk. I mean, stunk. I wouldn't have drafted me. And I didn't get drafted, right? And so I get a call from Joe. He goes, "Did I just hear that you played in that all-star game?" I go, "Yeah, I did, Mr. Tubular." He goes, "Are you a moron?" He goes, "There's a reason we tell you these things." I go, "My bad," all right? But I get a chance to go try out for the Philadelphia 76ers. And I go there. Now, the biggest thrill here was they had just signed Dr. J. George McGinnis had just signed, had been played World Be Free. Now, I go to camp, and I'm in the backcourt with Dwight Clay. Now, I would bet here almost no one knows who Dwight Clay is. Dwight Clay played for Notre Dame and hit the winning shot to break UCLA's 88-game winning streak. I played next to him in the backcourt during that camp. That was the highlight of it, was Dwight Clay. Now, I wasn't a math major at Williams, but I went around, I counted up the no-cut contracts, and it didn't add up to me. So I signed with Athletes in Action, which is a Christian basketball team at the time, was based in Indianapolis, and then LA, and then finally in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I signed with them and went on to play from 1975 to 1983. Now, does anybody recognize any of these names? Who did Glenn Farrell play for? Amherst, right? Pretty mediocre to good, solid player. Where did Othar play? Trinity. Is that you, Dougie? Yeah. Yep, very good. I would expect you to know that. Brad Moore played at Colby, and Joe Williams, actually, I didn't even play against. I coached against him, but we just stuck his name in there because I couldn't think of anybody else who was any good that I played against. Now, here was the world that changed for me overnight, where philosophies would be challenged. Everything I was building in my life would be challenged. Here are my opponents with Athletes in Action: Bill Cartwright, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Albert King, Robert Parrish, Tree Rollins, John Stockton, and Reggie Theus. That was in my first year. All in one schedule, all of them within a 1-month period. Robert Parrish, obviously Jabbar was the best player I ever played against, but Robert Parrish wasn't far behind. I had a friend, a teammate who was at the University of Georgia, and he said to me, we're going down to play Parrish. He went to a little school in Shreveport, Louisiana, Centenary College, had just broke into the top 20, and he said to me, my roommate goes, he's going to catch your shot. I go, what do you mean? He goes, he's just going to go up and get it. He's going to catch it. I looked at it. His name was Jim Hyder from Georgia. I go, Jim, I'll throw the ball over the freaking backboard before I'll let him catch my shot. First half, I'm dribbling down the left. He's right under the basket. I'm about 19 feet out. I go, well, this is close enough. And I shoot it, and he goes at a 45-degree angle and picks it out like a grapefruit. And to make it worse, dribbles behind his back at midcourt and goes down and mercifully didn't dunk it, just laid it in. I'm trying to think if that year, the dunk might not have been back yet. But this was an education. This was an education. Now the guys that I got to play with. So we were a Christian basketball team. Jerry Tarkane at UNLV had a quote, they pray for you before the game, then they beat you up, then they pray for you again at the end. Okay, and that was true. Now, in back-to-back weeks, Bill Cartwright played at the University of San Francisco with Winford Boynes and James Hardy. Those were 3 of the top 10 draft picks that year, all at USF. We played USF, and then the following week played UNLV with Reggie Theus and those guys. USF was number 1 in the country. Nevada, Las Vegas was number 2. We beat USF by 38, and we beat Nevada, Las Vegas by 32. And you'll see why in a second when I tell you who was on the team that I was playing on. Okay, so this is Hallelujah, What a Team. This is a piece that was in Sports Illustrated. Here's the team. Ralph Drollinger, 7'2", 265, was John Wooden's last center on his last championship team. Ed Gregg, University of Utah, second-round draft choice of the New Jersey Nets. Brad Hoffman, starting point guard for the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Mike Robinson, player of the year in the Big Ten, leading scorer in the Big Ten. Alonzo Bradley, who actually signed that year. Connie and I got up over Christmas break. We all left. We had just played University of Maryland in Anaheim, California. We get up to go get the paper the next day, and on the back of the paper, 2 days later, it says, Bradley scores 15 for Rockets. He didn't go home for Christmas. He went to Houston and played for the Houston Rockets. So we didn't have him the rest of the year. This team would have finished somewhere in the middle third of the NBA. That's how good it was. It was just a remarkable group of guys. And for that year, we were a little bit like a rock band because we were a phenomenon. And the Daily News in New York would rank somebody 1, and then we'd be 1A all the time. Here are the teams we played. Again, this is a little different. And you'll see in a second my very first game, but it was a thrill. For a kid like me, I was 5'2" in 10th grade. To end up showing up on these courts, we played in the largest crowd in the history of Ohio State University basketball. All our games were on the road. Every game was on the road. Now, this is Tree Rollins. 7'2", about 280. These are 2 games against Duke. Played for Clemson, first-round draft choice, the Atlanta Hawks. My very first game with Athletes in Action was against Clemson University. A few changes from my time at Williams. One, we never got on a bus, right? We got on a plane. We flew all the way to Columbia, South Carolina, got in a nice bus and drove to Clemson, South Carolina and played. Now that day we're having dinner with Clemson. We often did these team dinners. And I'm going through a salad bar. And you know how they have the glass thing on each side of the salad bar and you go down each side? So I've got my lettuce and I've got tomato and I look over and I see knees. Knees. And I just went like this. And I said, and I remember turning and going, Toto, we ain't in Kansas anymore, right? I had never seen that in LaSalle Gym. Ever. It was a really fun night. All right, so then we got to play the NBA All-Star team. That was great, and Marvin the Eraser Webster. And you guys remember Slick Watts? Slick Watts, shaved bald head with a sideways headband. That's who I was matched up with for the entire game. Okay, international competition. This was really fun, but we got to play the USSR. Now, this is when the USSR was really the USSR. All right, now remember, the Miracle on Ice didn't happen until the 80s. This is still the Cold War. And I remember standing there in the LA Sports Arena with someone with the American flag and the Russian flag and hearing the 2 anthems. I remember thinking to myself, we got to win this. Like, we're going to save the universe. If we win this game. It was a very different feel than we have now. And this is my rookie year. And then, okay, on the left, this is Vladimir Tachenko, 7'5", 350 pounds. He was not a person, he was a place. Okay? He was actually born on March 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I've never seen anyone like this as a physical specimen in my life. When we took the Russian team to Disney World, Disneyland, whichever one's in California, and we couldn't get him off Space Mountain. And the line was like the Red Sea. Because, you're waiting, they have those stupid signs, 45 minutes from here, 30 minutes from here. He would just walk to the back, grunt, everybody would move, and he'd get right back on Space Mountain at his own leisure. And this was a game. Now, the week before this game, the Russian team had beaten University of Louisville, who was number 3 in the country, by about 25. And Billy Packer said, there is no team in North America that can beat this team. Athletes in Action 79, USSR 71. It's a great game, great game. And that's me shooting a jump shot against the Russian team. And I must tell you, I never had more fun in my life than when they reinstituted the stupid dunk. It was so much fun to be able to dunk in games. And I actually can't remember if I actually dunked that or got fouled. Or perhaps he blocked it. I don't remember. But it was really fun to play in these types of games that were very, very meaningful games. This is against the number one world rated Yugoslavian team. They had won the 1980 gold medal. And this picture is here. I'm dunking over a guy he's trailing me, but that's Drazen Petrovic. Does anybody remember that name? Drazen Petrovic played for the Nets for a long time, was a great player, died very tragically in a car accident when he was in the NBA. He was a great young player. He was probably only 19 years old here. Okay, People's Republic of China. We had a 7-game series in Shanghai and Beijing. There I am in Tiananmen Square. This is all part of me looking at the world very differently, I think, than some of my teammates. That's at the Forbidden City, and that's on the Great Wall with my coach. So it was a wonderful experience. Now, at this time, China hadn't really been opened very much. 1981-ish. So it was a phenomenal experience to go there at that point in history. And then coaching. Now, coaching, when you develop a philosophy as a player, nothing will test it more than coaching. Ever. All the things you say, all the things you think were important, you now get to take them and to place them in a framework to teach the game of basketball to a group of young men or young women if you're coaching women. And so this was wonderful. Now, let's talk about it. I was a head coach, 29 years old. Connie, for some, likes that picture because she said I look younger. I was younger. Okay, and this is the actual phone call when they offered me the Williams job. We had someone living with our house. This is Bob Peck. I'm on the phone with Bob Peck, and he tells me, you've got the job. Now, some of you out there, Dougie for sure knows this, I finished second for this job. I didn't get this job. I finished second. And when I got the athletic director's job at Dartmouth, I used to go around to all the alums and say, you know, I've always loved Dartmouth. And one of the reasons I've always loved Dartmouth is because the guy who they offered the job to took the Dartmouth job. So Dartmouth, of course I love them. They got me my first head coaching job, right? Okay, this is the thing you have to do. Now, first of all, before we understand this, understand that here's what really good basketball coaching is all about. It's keeping the 5 guys who hate you away from the 5 who aren't sure yet. You just got to keep them apart, right? As soon as they start to mingle, you're toast as a coach. But in the wrong situation, the prison's a great job, orphanage is a great job. Prison, no alumni. Orphanage, no parents. It doesn't get any better than that. Now, you go around, you'll hear about helicopter parents. They're not helicopter parents. They're not hovering. They've landed. They're sitting behind you on the bench. All right? So you've got to be able to navigate this. Your philosophy has to be able to stand the test of all these outside influences and take your group of young people and sell them on a bunch of things that they don't want to be sold on right away until they understand the value. So Connie also likes this because she thinks I look like I'm in agony. All right? But then there's the ecstasy. Dad, again, now he has no corner to hide in anymore in the gym. So he has to go with the masses. And this was after the buzzer went off in a game in the NCAA tournament against Amherst. This is my first team, my very first team. Great group of kids. We had some problems. I was the tallest guy. That wasn't good. And I was a guard. All right, but it was a wonderful group. Johnny McNicholas and Artie Podoriano were my first 2 captains. They were great captains. Now, what did I like about it? I loved coaching smart kids. I loved it. So I had a player by the name of Russ Howard. Is Russ, are you here at all? No, Russ is not here. He lives in town. And The whole time we got the job, when you saw me on the phone, we hung up and I looked at her and I said, I cannot believe we got the Williams job. I can't believe this. We get in the car, pack up at the end of summer. I finished graduate school. Connie finished off her job. We're in the cornfield in Manitoba, walking through the woods at night, through the corn one night, and I looked at her, I said, I can't believe we're going back. I don't understand this. Chicago, Bobby Patterson, we stay with him. We're walking through the city. I can't believe we're going back to Williams. I can't believe it. We pull into Williamstown. September 2nd, 3rd, 4th, we're walking through town. It's dusk. The church bells are ringing. I look, I go, I can't believe we're back. Fast forward. We're playing against Hamilton in my very first game as a coach, 29-year-old head coach. And two things happened. One, they scored 7 points in a row on us, and I'm sitting on the bench. I literally had this thought, geez, we should call a timeout. Wait a minute. That's me. And late in the first half, a player, Russ Howard, comes running over to the bench. He grabs a loose ball. A Hamilton kid pushes him out of bounds, and he looks at the ref and said, hey, ref, I did not get here of my own volition. And the light and a bell rang, and I went, I'm back at Williams. Those are my first two captains, wonderful, both very successful kids. This is an NCAA tournament team. So I got to write a book in 2002. Now, I was voted by the class 75 as the least likely to write a book. So what I did was I just put a ton of pictures in it, okay? It's got a ton of pictures. But there are some things that we stressed in that book that I stress as a coach, and one was work ethic. So this is a kid by the name of Jimmy Frew who won New England's Unsung Hero Award for me. Jimmy, I think, was class of 99. He played on 2 Final Four teams. You had to drive a stake through his heart before he quit. And he worked every day, every day, every day. Wonderful kid. Work ethic, what we tried to do was tell kids that really what was going to separate us was we're going to come to work every day. That's going to be our standard. I don't care if you broke up with your girlfriend. I actually don't care if you got a 70 on a test. I don't care if mom and dad are PO'd at you. I don't care. For 2 hours, you're going to give me what you have, and then we'll worry about all the other stuff later. And he was able to do that, plus spend time out of season, which kids do. Michael Nagello, National Player of the Year, sportsmanship and character. He was the first winner he was the winner of the initial Jostens Award, which is not only a great player, but a person of great character, community service, and all those things. And I want to say this about this. All these slides you're going to see, it could have been any number. It could have been 30 other kids. 30 other kids. Because that's how good these kids were. That's how much fun it was to coach kids of this quality that choose this place. Humility. Michael Humphreys, he was an amazing kid. By the way, this is one of the 5 best guards to ever play at Williams. No question. He did something every week that I had never seen before from a Division III kid. Never practiced it. It was all natural to him. So we're down at Amherst in 96. By the way, the 1996 team that lost in the Sweet 16 is the best team that this college has ever had. Without the injury to our point guard, Grant Farmer, I think that team is a national championship team. We brought 6'9" off the bench, and we had all 5 players selected to the All-East team, all 5 starters. So Humphreys, we're down at Amherst. It's a bear of a game, back and forth, back and forth. Late in the game, we steal the ball 3 straight times for dunks. That ends the game. The first was Humphreys, and he steals it, and he was like a gazelle. He was so fluid and athletic. And as he's running, and I see the look in his eye, and I go, oh, Lord, he's going to try to dunk it. I go like this, just lay it in. He not only doesn't just lay it in, he dribbles up, turns his back, dunks it like this, and smiles at me over here. He was just an amazing kid, but he didn't want to. He was very happy scoring 12 points a game. Nagello was an All-American. McGuire was a great player. He was very happy playing the role that he was going to play on this team. And then John Conti, criticism and praise. So criticism and praise, the thing about John was he took them both the same, right? the way we're wired, I can tell you this, if Connie says one negative thing to me, she better have 10 good things saved up and unload them throughout the course of the day to bring me back to some kind of equilibrium. See, criticism and praise, we hear them both, but we hear criticism louder, right? We hear criticism louder. And so as a coach, that took me a good 5-6 years to learn that it's just the way we're wired. We want positive feedback, great, but somehow you've got to get your guys to buy into, like, we've got to be realistic here, okay? All right, and Robert Williams' enthusiasm. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Nothing great has ever been accomplished apart from enthusiasm." It's one of my favorite quotes. I try to think of anything I've accomplished in my life. None of it's been done without a level of enthusiasm that was really important to the success of it. I remember I went to see him play. He played at Canterbury School. He had two Williams guys as coaches, first Jeff Goodell and then Jerry Kelly. Jerry, who, of course, was an All-New England caliber player here. Great individual, great man, wonderful player. And he said, "Harry, you got to come see this kid play." So I go down, and he's like a division, they call him a Division III Charles Barkley. He was the round mound of rebound, right? 6'3", he might say 220, I might say a little heavier, okay? And I go to see him play, and I go home and I say to Connie, and I said this about a handful of kids in my life, I got to have this kid. Got to have him, right? And, well, why? She goes, "Well, how many do you score?" I go, "I don't know." "Well, how many rebounds do you have?" I go, "I don't know." "Well, can he shoot?" "I really don't know." I just want to coach this kid. I want to coach him. Every day I come to work. "Robert, you ready to work?" "Coach, I'm ready to work." Now, recruiting is one of the key pieces. And before we move on to the athletic directorship, I want to give you two brief stories about recruiting. One, I had the state player of the year from the state of Ohio in my office one time. I really wanted him to come here. He was there with his dad. And so I said to him, "Well, tell me, Ryan, what do you enjoy academically?" Dad goes, "Well, Ryan likes the sciences." I go, "Well, Ryan, if you're not playing basketball, what do you do?" "Well, Ryan likes to dance." Okay. I go, "Ryan, what are you reading right now? What book are you reading?" "Well, Ryan is reading," and I look at Ryan and I go, "Ryan, how do you do that without moving your lips?" And then I grabbed him, I said, "Come on, we're going for a walk." And I took the kid off and I walked myself. Second story, I was recruiting a kid who was all city, New York City, and I go down to see him play. Now, a lot of gyms in New York are like this because they're in these interior buildings. You have a door on each side of the court, and there's no door at the other end. It's just a wall. So you got to come in and go out the same way. So I go in, I got my dad with me, and we go down and we sit, and we're watching this kid play. He's horrible. Horrible. I could have shot myself for driving in New York. He's like 2 for 18 from the floor. He's small, he's slow. I'm like, I said, "Dad, we got to wait till the third quarter, then we can go." So third quarter ends, and I'm going, can I get out of here without seeing his dad? So we go down, I'm trying to walk out, here comes the dad, like intercepts me and goes, "Oh, Coach, I'm so sorry. I just want you to know he's just nervous because you're here." And I said, "Well, that's unfortunate because I'll be at most of his college games." If he plays for me, now I can sub him in and go to the locker room, but I don't think that's going to work. All right, so we won, back in the day, the ECAC was all we had. It was a big deal on our campus. ECAC championship, the New England championship. We won that in '87 with a freshman point guard by the name of Garcia Major, who is one of the best players in our college's history. Sports Illustrated. They did an article on us because it was the first year that we were eligible, and we were number 8 in the country. Now, this cow lives on a farm in South Williamstown. We've either eaten him at this point or he's dead. Okay. But Robert Williams from the Bronx, it took us 1 hour and 45 minutes to get him to touch the cow. I've never seen a kid so scared in my life. It was unbelievable. But that was really a breakthrough for us to get that kind of coverage. Now, again, smart kids, there's a quote in this where John Body, class of '96, has a quote in the article, and the guy says, "Well, are you a deep team?" He goes, "We're deeper than Sappho." So the guy comes to me and goes, I think I got a misprint here. His name was Michael Jaffe. I go, what is it, Mike? He goes, well, this kid said you're deeper than Sappho. I go, yeah, well, that's a Greek poetress. Yeah, okay. At least he had the decency not to say, oh, yeah, I knew that. Okay, and then all of a sudden the NCAA showed up. Now, let me say a word about the NCAA. It's important for our kids to be exposed to the rest of the country because we are different in NESCAC. It's more important for the rest of the country to be exposed to us, to see what you can do with these types of kids. Really remarkable. So there we are at our Final Four practice and under the sign at Salem, Virginia, which was really a blast. And then we finished third twice. I don't think the consolation game exists anymore, but I'll tell you what, if you lose both, it stinks, but if you can get out of there with a win, it's one of the best feelings in the world, right? Okay, so Connie, as we get ready to go into the final part, one of the things we found as we opened up these boxes was treasure trove of stuff. You go down a rabbit hole easy. Well, we found hundreds of letters from kids who had played for me, and so we found a couple that we thought would embrace the teaching philosophy that I was trying to impart to these kids. And so the first one Seth, Connie? So Seth Mayer was my captain in 96, one of the co or tri-captains. Here's his letter.
I can't believe the season's here already. You never really know how much you'll miss something until you wake up one morning and it's not there.
And this is him reading it.
I guess you just play every possession as if it's your last one and leave everything you've got on the court so that when it's really over, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I have no regrets. It's funny. Of all the science classes and the time I spent with doctors through the pre-med program at Williams, nothing prepared me for the rigors of med school, as well as the 4 years I spent with you, Coach Z, Coach Fran, and the fellas. If not just for the discipline, which I think I already had a little bit of before Williams, but more importantly, the concept of mental toughness. It was something you stressed so much last year, and I'm not sure if I ever really understood what it meant. It's hard to grasp a concept like that when you're part of such a successful program. Relatively speaking, we didn't go through that much adversity in my 4 years. Now, however, I'm finding those peaks and valleys, frustrations and excitements day in and day out. But when it all seems on the border of overwhelming, I can indeed look back to basketball, realize what a long, hard road it was to achieve the success that we enjoyed, the work we put in and day out, especially when nobody was looking. That's the work that pays off in the long run. Love Seth.
So hold there, Connie. So Seth Mayer is this tall, tough as nails. He was small, but boy, was he slow. One of the single hardest decisions I ever had to make was when our starting point guard, Grant Farmer, blew his knee out in 96. We had just taken Davidson to triple overtime and lost in a heartbreaker. And then the next game back, Grant blew his knee out, and Seth assumed he was the backup guard, that he would be the starting point guard. And I called him in. I said, Seth, I'm starting a freshman. I'm going to start Jimmy Frew there because I think he makes us better right now. But your role will be the same, and I have no doubt that you will show up at practice today and no one will notice a thing. No one will notice it. And they didn't. He's a quality kid. High-quality kid. And I've been on the phone with him a few times. He called when I had my little mishap. The next player is John Body, one of the best players I ever coached, guarded all 5 positions on the floor, and he reflects on his inability to take his group to the Final Four.
March 23rd, 1997. I just wanted to pass along my sincerest congratulations to you for the recently completed season. I wish I had something more profound to offer you, but somehow it would all sound trite or hackneyed, and such words certainly wouldn't have fit such a wonderful year. I have been prodded by those who know the program if I'm jealous of the success of this year's team, if I feel slighted because the 1996 squad had to go on the road sooner. I simply smile and think of the photograph Coach took of Shapes, Matty G.
It's that photograph up there.
I've always thought that it looks more like a picture of 6 brothers than of 6 teammates. And that's how I've always viewed all the guys, whether they were my year or not, as family. So, when others ask if I'm upset that the 1997 Williamsies were able to accomplish something I never could, I shake my head. After all, what kind of person would I be if I weren't very happy for and very proud of my younger brothers? I guess then that I not only want to congratulate you all, but also to thank you for doing the family name proud. Witnessing the accomplishment of this year's team made me recall my 4 years at Williams with even more fondness. And for that, I'm grateful. Every best wish, John Bonney, class of '96.
Wonderful player, great kid. We're gonna play one now, and we debated as to whether to play this next one because it was way too long, but we shortened it. It also, at times, I listen to it and I think it's very self-serving, but it so sums up some of the things that we were trying to teach that we decided to go ahead and plunk it in there anyway. This is Emmanuel Benjamin. Okay, we recruited him from, you want me to change the slide, honey? Oh, no, you got him. We recruited him from Zimbabwe. When I picked him up, he was 2 weeks late getting here because of a visa problem. I picked him up at the airport the same day we were playing Tufts in football, and I get in the car with him. I get in the car with him, and he says to me, "Coach, when do we play Georgetown?" And I said, "Well, unfortunately, man, they just rotated off, but don't worry, Bates is back on." This is a voicemail that he sent when, during my darkest days of rehab, I had come out of 2 weeks in the heart hospital after the transplant and having a stroke and going blind. What do you call it? Not a transplant, geez. Bypass, yeah, geez. That was even worse. And I was laying in the rehab hospital feeling a little bit sorry for myself. He's going to use a phrase in this voicemail that I'll touch on when he's done because it stuck with him, and it's something I said to virtually every one of my teams over the years.
The development.
Doing great. Worry about him renewing my contract.
46 one-year contracts. There you go.
Congratulations, the whole thing. I'm sorry.
All right.
Hey, Coach, it's Manny here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing much better. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I'm feeling since I heard when you had your stroke and how you're fighting back. It's given me an opportunity to reflect on my college basketball journey, and I feel compelled to honor you. You not only elevated my skills, but you also instilled these invaluable life lessons. Throughout my college basketball career, Coach Sheehy, you demonstrated such an unwavering dedication to the sport and to our team's success. Your tireless work ethic was such a source of inspiration, pushing us every day. Doubles, triples, late practices, early morning conditioning, meticulously analyzing the game footage. You consistently went above and beyond to ensure our preparedness, because that's what we were. We were always prepared. I always felt we had a cheat sheet because we were so prepared. We knew what they were running. We could run what they were running better than they could. And that dedication to our growth as athletes just fostered this culture of excellence at Williams that set the tone for my future achievements, our collective achievements. Beyond the X's and O's of basketball, you also served as such a great mentor, imparting wisdom that I still use today. Even when I was coaching, I would just use everything that you taught me. I started to even sound like you when I was coaching.
That's not good.
Like you understood our development as individuals, just as important as what we could do on the court. Through your guidance, you taught us the importance of discipline, teamwork, resilience, and most importantly, the value of embracing challenges. So you have this environment that nurtured personal growth, emphasizing character development, and fostering a strong sense of camaraderie among teammates. As you know, I talked to maybe between 15 to 17 of the guys I played with on a regular basis. So this mentorship extended beyond the 4 years of college. We all continued to provide guidance and support to each other even after our playing careers had ended. You provided that atmosphere. One of the most significant gifts I think Coach Sheehy, you gave to me was an unwavering belief in my potential. I had moments of self-doubt, but you stood as this pillar of encouragement and pushing me to try and exceed my own expectations. I'll never forget that. It's something that I want to impart upon my children and my kids growing up. I have a 2-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, sorry, a 6-year-old. And I want to be that mentor to them, that parent to them, the way you were to me in pursuit of excellence. Everything that you taught us has transcended the realm of sports, shaping our mindset, empowering us for all these obstacles we have in this thing called life. Because even though basketball is the foundation of a relationship, your impact has extended well beyond the game itself. And I appreciate you for that, Coach. You having a stroke and made me want to turn around and impart something that you imparted upon me when I pulled my ACL, and it was just tough coming back and all the rehab. Maybe I complained, or as you would say, quit whining. At one point, I didn't think I was gonna just ever be able to move the way I moved, and you could tell by my body language. And you just turned around and just said, "Hey, don't tell me the sea is rough. Just bring the darn shit in." And I will never forget that. I will never forget that. And I use that not only when I was coaching, but now with my job here at the United Nations. When we're going through a resolution and all sides are arguing just on wording, just like 1 or 2 words, and no one wants to be there and everyone wants to leave. I just feel like standing up and saying, "Hey, don't tell me the sea is rough. Just bring this darn shit in." And I appreciate you for that, Coach. I will never forget that. Thank you for everything you've done in my life and shaping my life and for my family. I love you very, very much. Thank you, Coach.
So he was just a wonderful kid, enjoyed coaching him. He didn't get to play Georgetown, but that's all right. I'm glad he didn't. So just philosophically, many of you probably don't realize I was the first coach of the first women's softball team that was a varsity here. And I coached JV soccer for 4 or 5 seasons. And I still kid Coach Russo that I had the single best winning percentage in the history of men's soccer at Williams College, because he would give me all the good freshmen that couldn't play. So he'd give me every good freshman. I'd go down, all I had to do was get the bus there. Yes, Roos. Yes, Coach.
I carried 20 players on the varsity soccer team, and he'd come to me every time he had a game, and we did say, and I probably 1 or 2 players. It would end up being more like 6 or 7 players, and he did never lose a game.
Thanks to Coach Russo. Well, a word about Coach, because I'm so thrilled you're here, Mike. When I left softball for 2 reasons. One, Dave Caputi had been hired as the offensive football coordinator, and he had coached softball before at Tufts, and so it was a natural for him to move into that slot. 2, I simply wanted to be around Mike Russo's soccer program, to just be a sponge and to watch how he trained and what he did. One of a number of the absolute we were fortunate at Williams to have some of the very best coaches at any level in this country. And Mike was one of those. So Mike, thanks for coming today. All right, then to close up, I then become an athletic director. Now, I didn't want to be a coach, by the way, number one. I wanted to coach at Williams. Very different. Like I didn't send resumes to 100 colleges. When Kurt Tong called me to tell me he was resigning and retiring and going to be an AD at Pomona College, I went, that's where I want to coach, right here, my home. These are some notes, just Maurice Shapiro wrote me. Linda Shearer was the head of the art museum, and she wrote me this lovely note about, and when you never know what your academic colleagues think. So when you get a good note from an academic colleague said, we think philosophically you fit here, we're thrilled for you, then that goes a long way toward making this a good home for an administrator. So we won, during my 10 years as AD, our department won 10 straight Directors' Cups, which is the national champion of champion trophies. It was really fun. Now, this will just show you the kind of, Williams is a great place. But in my 10 years of winning the Directors' Cup, which is the prominent award in our country for athletic departments, I got 2 notes in 10 years. One from Morty Shapiro and one from Dave Pilichowski, the librarian. Right? And so I don't know whether this is just taken for granted. I would get notes from colleagues saying, geez, number 9, number 8, 9, 10. It's not easy to win this thing. It really isn't. One of the thrills of my career as an AD at Williams was ESPN Game Day coming here. And so I get a phone call one Monday morning, and it's Chris Fowler, who used to be the host of Game Day. Lee Corso, myself, the whole crew, they want to come in and do the Williams Amherst game. Can you house us? So I call Billies and Grounds. I go, can we do this? And if we do it, will anyone show up? Right? So we did it. It was spectacular. And at the end, Lee Corso took Lord Jeffrey Amherst's head and threw it out and put the cow head on, and it was just awesome. Now, this is why I took the AD's job. The Game of Life was about to come out. We had heard about this, and this was going to be a challenge to athletics as we know it. And the admissions process, my wife, Connie, was in the admissions office for years, and everybody thinks, oh, that's great. I go, no, it wasn't great at all. All I did was find out a few days early who wasn't getting in. Okay, that's all it did for me. I think you did a little bit more than that, honey, but so for me, it was about trying to maintain, listen, there is a reason to have a viable, vibrant, successful athletic program, right? It is, in fact, important to this college. It doesn't have to win the Director's Cup every year, but your kids have to be well coached. The coaching jobs here have to be good because our coaches have a chance to be successful, and that we have facilities that enable us to be successful. Not over-the-top facilities, and I will say Lamb Farley Field is just gorgeous. I mean, I'd love that. The football field's gorgeous. But this was going to be a real challenge to us, and we had a year-long committee. As a matter of fact, Coach Russo, of all people, took out the head of the committee that was investigating athletics, and he comes into the office the next day, he goes, I think we're okay. I had some beard diplomacy. He had the head of the committee over, who then proceeded to step out onto the faculty floor and kill us for an hour. So Mike, well done. And then I decided to go to Dartmouth, and this move stunned some people. I think everybody thought we were probably lifers here. I think we probably thought we were lifers here, but everybody gets to a point, and I had gotten to a point where I didn't think that I was able to use every gift that I had been given, and I wanted to try to expand what I could do, and one of those is fundraising, donors. I made a quote when I left here, the only donors that Williams will let me talk to are organ donors. That got in the paper and, of course, blew up and all this. You get, sometimes Connie just tells you got to stop. You got to stop a sentence earlier, right? You'll be fine. This is the press conference. Now, this is Jim Kim, the president who hired me, who was magnificent. Oh, my gosh. So at the press conference, they call me up, and he hugs me, and he whispers in my ear, Harry, I want to win the Ivy League championship in every sport. And I looked at him, and I leaned over, and I whispered in his ear, good. I'd like to have a 42-year contract, okay? And I only had him for 2 years, but he was magnificent to work with. So when you take, the thing about being an AD as we close is, you take everything you've learned now as a player and a coach, and now you get to take it and put your imprimatur on a department, which is really thrilling. And to be able to have a vision, to have the institution buy into the vision. So we had a thing called Dartmouth Peak Performance. We didn't do it here at Williams. It was too expensive. I know I would have never gotten buy-in. But one day, Jim Kim called me, and he said, Harry, I'm a bachelor this weekend. I'm going to go to the volleyball game tonight. You want to come? And I said to him, well, I'm not a bachelor. Connie's coming up from Williamstown because we lived apart the first year. I said, but we'll meet you at the game. It'll be great. So I'm sitting with him at the game, and he goes, what are you doing tomorrow? The date was September 27th. What are you doing tomorrow? I said, well, what time? He goes, 5 a.m. I go, well, let me check. Oh, I'll be asleep. He goes, no, you won't. We're going to play golf. 5 a.m. So I meet him at the golf course at 5 a.m., and it's pea soup. You can't see a thing. Can't see a thing. Honest to goodness, the first 4 holes, all I did was swing, hit, and drop a ball somewhere. That's all I did. I couldn't see a thing. On the 9th hole, he said, Harry, what's one thing you couldn't get done at Williams that you want to do? And I said, Jim, we underserve our athletes at places like Williams and Dartmouth. A cappella groups are great. All that stuff's great. The commitment that these kids make to athletics is over and above. Over and above, and we're not taking care of them. Well, what do you mean? Well, you can see all the things that we did. We put a holistic piece, a pie together, and everything came under that umbrella, from sports science to strength training to sports psychology to leadership to nutrition, everything. We had signs put up in the dining hall. If you wanted brain food, this is the line you go in. If you're having trouble sleeping, you eat this stuff here. All over our dining hall. It was spectacular, just spectacular. Now, it was expensive. I got $1 million gift to kick it off, and they now have raised, we had raised before I left there about $7 million toward endowing the program in total, and it was spectacular. And so this is development, resilience, ingenuity, valor, and excellence. Drive was our motto. These are the values. Development's really, really important, physically, emotionally. We want to develop young people to be productive adults, but to be more than that, to thrive in life. And we want to use athletics as a way, as a vehicle to help them thrive. Resilience. We currently live with, in our institutions, as students, the least resilient generation in the history of our country. No coping skills, no ability to bounce back, right? It's frightening right now, frightening. So, if you're a baseball player and you fail 7 out of 10 times, what do they call you? 300 hitter, and you're probably a Hall of Famer. You're a basketball player, you fail half the time, you're a 50% shooter. Failure is part of it. There's a wonderful book out called The Gift of Failure. It's a great read. It was written by a woman who lived right near us in Hanover. Ingenuity, creativity. You know what the great thing about basketball is, or any sport? It values creativity and discipline equally. That is a great thing. That is a great thing. Without creativity, basketball is boring, right? Without discipline, basketball is chaos, right? And so you see that. Some teams just play chaotically, and it's not very much fun to watch. Valor. So I always tell people, why valor instead of courage? Well, then it would have been Dreiss, and that doesn't work. So you gotta, sometimes you just gotta mold something. But valor has a moral component. Courage can be good or bad, right? Someone can strap a bomb to himself and go blow up something. That's courage, right? With a little stupidity added in, right? But that's courage. But valor has a moral component, right? You're in something that's larger than yourself. And finally, excellence. You just Google excellence, your computer explodes, it's all over the place. But excellence, my point about excellence was, when I got to Williams as a coach, and I walked into LaSalle Gym, I saw it differently. Now I had played in all these different arenas, beautiful facilities, 12,000 people, and I looked and I said, well, how are we going to be excellent with this? And you know what I came to in my first year? Excellence isn't about a building, it's about a state of mind. It's about the way you approach everything you do every day. Right? It doesn't have anything, it has very little to do with bricks and mortar. If excellence was about bricks and mortar, we would not have won 10 Directors' Cups. Because our bricks and mortar are mediocre athletically. Right? Now we have this beautiful football field, lacrosse field. We have a nice track now. But for the 10 years that I was AD, our facilities were very mediocre, all right, which are fine. We had great coaches, okay? Okay, now we're going to talk about the landscape, and then we'll take questions. So the landscape, all the stuff I've come through now, we've arrived at a place where, like a lightning bolt, things have changed, right? Overnight, things have changed. So the first thing you have is name, image, and likeness. This player is a player by the name of Jordan Dingle. He played at University of Pennsylvania. He was the player of the year a year ago, runner-up this year in the Ivy League. He will not go to Penn as a senior because St. John's reportedly is giving him $350,000, an apartment, and a car, right, to play, and it's legal. It's legal now. Is it, Connie, these are the Cavender twins? These kids left San Jose and went to Miami. They make $1 million a year. There are more than a handful of young kids making more than $1 million a year because of name, image, and likeness. That is a total change, a total change. And that's a landscape. Frankly, I'm going to sum it up for you. It stinks, right? I don't have any problem with kids getting something, but I think we've now, you know, it's insane. It's gone the other way. All right, so we're going to skip that and go right to the end. We brought the magic of LaSalle into Chandler. That's a picture in Chandler. We're going to close with this quote. I have it memorized. I memorized it the week it came out. It was written by a gentleman by the name of Mark Duffy, who was the basketball manager my freshman year for the varsity. And he wrote a great quote about the seniors that were leaving the team that year. Like a fireman rushing to his 50th burning mattress, after a while, the quest for the chase gets numbed, and in the end, what you remember are the people. That's the basis of all this. It's the people. It's the people you get to coach. It's the people you get to play with. It's the people you get to lead and help in a department. It's about the people. And he goes on right after this and said, first, Vern Manley. To many of us, he was like Merlin, right? And he was, and he really was. So I'm gonna stop there. I want to say thank you for allowing me to do this. We had a blast. I think our marriage lasted through this. It wasn't easy, but thanks very much. If there are one or two questions, I'm happy to take them.
A few minutes for questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Why don't we take 5? I don't want to.
5 minutes of questions or so? Yeah.
Mike Tate.
Harry, have you ever shared your thoughts on resilience or lack of resilience with the greater college community?
When I was at Dartmouth, I did. I definitely did because, listen, coaching is one of the areas, it's maybe the last meritocracy, right? Kids are going to fail and they fail publicly. So resilience is really important. I have shared it, Mike. Everybody knows it. They don't know what to do about it. I can tell you what to do about it. Hold the standards. Set standards, hold the standards. Kids aren't stupid, they'll figure it out.
Aaron?
Yep.
Barney Walsh, Massachusetts.
Hey, Barney? Yep.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
When Connie was taken ill and you had a long journey in front of you, you went on Caring Bridge. And I saw a side of you I had never seen before. And that was each day you wrote a note to Connie and shared it with all of us. It was the most beautifully written diary I'd ever seen. And what it grew for me was an appreciation not only about love for your partner, but also your ability to express it. And it was beautiful, and I've never forgotten.
Oh, thank you, Barney. Yeah. I must say it was cathartic for me. Those were really dark times, much harder than what I've gone through for me physically. But she's doing great, as you can see. So hallelujah.
My wife read that to me every. Did Carmen Paladino know?
Pardon me? Oh, hey, Carm.
Barb read me those things every night. Thank you.
Yeah. No, believe me, it did me more good than it did anybody who read them.
Tommy, that's right.
Yeah, I just wondered if you ever dunked on Jabbar.
There's a short answer to that.
Who's the best player you ever?
I mean, Jabbar was, I will tell you this about when we played the NBA All-Star team. We played the NBA All-Star team, we got to play the Pacers, and we got to play the Los Angeles Lakers. And you remember back in our day when ESPN came on board, probably the 90s, Big Monday was the Big East game of the week. And so you'd watch Syracuse and Georgetown in the Dome with 32,000 people. And you thought to yourself, this is like an NBA game. You know what I learned? It's not even close to an NBA game. Not even close. Earl Tatum, who played on the national championship, I think, for Al McGuire, he was a guard for the 6'5" guard for the Lakers. And they can be 8-10 feet off you, and they can block a shot, get a piece of a shot. The difference was how quick people jump. It's how quick they close out. It's the strength and the power. It's actually, I don't know who the best athletes in the world are, but if it's not basketball, I don't want to even ever run into who it is. They are spectacular. But Jabbar was so fluid, so gifted. You know how they always looked, one of those airplane movies where he's a pilot and the kid says to him, my dad says you're lazy. You don't run up and down. You try running up and down, dragging Bob Lanier's rear end. The problem is they're so gifted that it just looks easy, but it's not.
One more question?
Yep.
Finally.
Harry, Tom Lee, I'm interested in your views of how this whole NIL system is going to change college athletics.
Yeah.
At each, whether you think it's going to have any impact on Division III or whether it's strictly a Division I.
Yeah, it will have an impact on Division III, and here's why, Tommy. One thing I should have mentioned about the NIL, the transfer portal. Yep. The transfer portal has a bunch of Division III kids in it right now who are really good that can play up a level or two. And do you know how many kids are in the transfer portal in the year 2022? 21,900 are in the transfer portal. Over 2,000 in basketball alone, in men's basketball alone. So when we talk about resilience, the reason resilience is going to be such a challenge is because they don't have to be. They just put themselves in the transfer portal till something gets easier. Right, till something gets easier. The other thing we're going to see that's going to play out is very few of the very best Ivy League players are going to finish in the Ivy League because the Ivy League isn't going to go with NIL money, right? And I'm glad. But the problem is now you have a kid, it's almost like, well, we'll put a kid in the Ivy League, we'll put him in AAA, and we'll see how good they are. Dingle's good. Like, he's going to help St. John's. Like, he's really good. And I think that transfer portal is another way to kind of say, well, I don't know what the answer is. I don't think locking a kid in is necessarily the answer, but there has to be some price. This is the Wild West now. I was on the phone yesterday with Pat Duquette, who played for me, he was my captain in '93. He was off to a recruiting event. And I said, Duke, are you done with recruiting? He goes, no, coach. He goes, it's unusual. We still need 2 kids. He goes, but we don't worry because of the transfer portal. He goes, you got to just use it. And I always remember Denny Crum and Rick Pitino, Kentucky and Louisville. 3-point shot comes into the game. Pitino goes, don't you dare shoot 3 inches in front of that line. And Crum said, ignore the line. And Crum got his rear end kicked. Right? So you take a rule and you use it. That's what the smart coaches are going to have to do now with the transfer portal. You can't look at it and go, I'm just not going to do that. Right? Because you're going to have 5 guys left on your team when the rest put themselves in the transfer portal. So it just, I don't like the landscape right now. I live at 275 Gale Road. I hide out there every day. I walk into town, I get a cup of coffee, I walk home, and I'm happy doing it. And I don't like where it's going. I still enjoy the games. I'll enjoy college football this year. I love the NCAA tournament, and I'll watch everything, but it really kind of stinks, I think. Can I just close with the 1 sentence, Kenny, or 2 sentences? I just want to tell you guys, there are just so many of you out there that, that mean something to me in really important ways. Your class has really been a fun class to know, and I'm really appreciative of it. The impact that you've had on our lives, particularly in basketball, Kenny and Dipper and Steve, and the impact that those guys had as I watched. And one thing I learned, you never know how much someone's watching, right? You just don't know I'm sure Kenny and Dick don't look back and go, he's looking at everything we do, right? Not everything. But the impact of living is really, really high. And this class, we just had the best time here and loved it here and loved our time here. And you guys were a part of that. So really appreciate being here with you here today. So thank you.